Appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everyone is having a good week so far and looking forward to the weekend. This is Persuasion through presentation, so delivering clear messaging to your audience. And just a point, this is really for in-person presentations, but most of the content can be applied for virtual and hybrid. And then I also want to make another note. I can't see the chat. John is monitoring it for me. But if you would like to engage, feel free to unmute yourself and kind of shout out as we go along. So we are going to get right into it. So this is a line from a movie. Why are you so serious? Does anyone know where the movie's from and who said it?
Joker?
What was that?
The Joker?
Dark Knight.
Yeah.
The
yeah.
Dark Knight. Yep. So this is Heath Ledger. He posthumously won for Best Supporting Actor as an Oscar from The Dark Knight. All right. What is in the box? What about this one? Yeah, I see you, Tim. Yep. So this is from Seven. This is Brad Pitt, right? What's in the box? What's in the box? I think he added a word in that little video, but that's okay. They are here. Anybody? So this one is from Poltergeist, right? Very creepy. Never seen the movie. Are you talking to me?
Robert De Niro, but I don't recall the movie.
Raging Bull, right?
Oh.
It is Robert De Niro, is Taxi Driver. And fun fact, this line was actually not in the script. De Niro just kind of made it up as he went, and he got nominated for the Oscar for it. So any of these lines, right, they're simple phrases. There's really nothing drastic about it. If you think about other movie lines, right, there's no crying in baseball. You can't handle the truth. Just keep swimming. Nothing crazy about any of these lines. And any line can be read from a script, but it's the delivery of that line and the performance of that line, or even the ability like De Niro to create your own line that makes them memorable, right? So lines that are written and performed in a way that makes them iconic. So Poltergeist was from '82. I've never seen the movie. I don't think I was born yet, but I know the line. In 1938, Orson Welles did a realistic radio dramatization of Martians, the invasion of Earth, right? So War of the Worlds. And a lot of people who did not see the beginning of that broadcast actually thought it was happening. So the delivery and the performance plays a key role in how your audience is going to react. Well, what if we applied the same concept to our presentations? What if we could deliver our content like De Niro and like Ledger that makes the message memorable and compelling by persuading our audience, by effectively communicating our ideas using the techniques of corporate storytelling? And so that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. We're going to talk about corporate storytelling techniques in presentations. My name is Rachel Jaffe. I am the CNA marketing coordinator with Hargrove Controls and Automation, and I am a corporate storyteller. Some of my experience in front of a crowd, in front of an audience, includes coaching. I did a lot of coaching with youth sports. I was a high school math teacher, and I was a youth director. I'm also a writer, and I've worked on persuasive copy and content in all of my marketing roles. So in the movies, going back to the beginning, right, the goal of the actor is to make the audience feel what they feel, right? And if it's delivered well, the audience is persuaded and it's believable, right? When Taxi Driver debuted, that was in like the 70s. In 76, it was like 47 years ago, and people still talk about it because it was a great performance. It was a great movie. The goal as a presenter is very similar, right? Your goal is to persuade your audience to do something. And whether you're presenting for a class or a client or even for a job interview, right? And persuading somebody to do something means that they have to make a decision. Well, how do we get people to make decisions? So this is the decision cycle. And so I'm going to start from right to left, right? In order for somebody to decide, they have to learn. In order for them to learn something, they have to be interested. In order for them to be interested, you have to get their attention. So what happens if we start in the learning phase, right? Think back to when you were in school. Let's say it's math class, because I was a math teacher. So we're going to go with that. And you come into math class, and maybe it's early in the morning or it's right after lunch. So you got that food coma going on. And your math teacher just starts going straight into trigonometry, right? Straight into sine and cosine and tangent, SOHCAHTOA, and she's drawing equations on the board. How enthusiastic are you going to be about that? Maybe not so much, right? Because what is the one question that students always ask? I know I asked it. When will I ever use this, right? So instead of just going straight into the content and the topic, what if she started with this? Today, we're going to solve a murder. And she starts talking about blood spatter and how trigonometry can be used to determine the angle of impact and the height of a person in order to solve a crime. This is what we could call the hook in storytelling, right? You're getting your audience's attention, and you can hook your audience in a presentation in a similar manner to get their attention. So I'm sure I have some readers out there. And for the readers, what makes a great story, right? As an author, excuse me, you have to persuade your audience that the universe that you're reading about is real, right? You have to persuade your audience that the universe that they're in, that dinosaurs can live among humans, that Martians are attacking Earth, and that we can travel across galaxies, right? Storytellers have to hold the interest of their audience and build suspense through the midpoint, through the climax, all the way to the finale, right? In books, it could be up to 400 pages. And authors are creating a situation where the audience wants to listen or read to what is coming next, right? They're engaged in the story. They want to learn about it. They want to learn about what happens. They want to learn about the characters. So your audience must be ready to listen and learn in order to decide. So your delivery must include all 4 components of the cycle, including getting their attention. Well, how do we get people's attention? Has anyone ever seen any of these photo like this? Maybe you've done it with your friends, right? There's one that has like, people have like the Eiffel Tower in their hand, right? So we call this forced perspective, and it's a photographic technique. And basically the idea is you are forcing your perspective onto your audience, right? You're helping them change their minds by helping them view things through a different lens. And we call this framing. This is kind of the hook part of your story, right? This is where we're getting the audience's attention. We're going to frame it. So when we frame it, we are comparing our topic to something that is already understood. And what this does is it prepares the audience for your key points, and it provides an interesting way of looking at your topic and how your topic will deliver the benefits to your audience. And there's several ways that you can frame. So you can start with a quotation. If it's somebody that a lot of people know, or just an interesting quote, you can maybe have the quote up on the screen with the picture of the person who said it. You can ask prompting questions to kind of get the conversation going. What is the most common fear of humans? A lot of people say it's public speaking. What is the best movie of all time? Is Die Hard really a Christmas movie? Right? So this kind of starts the conversation, gets people critically thinking. You can tell a story. You can use details and imagery to paint a picture and connect that to your point. This one time at band camp, right? Something like that. You can use images, you can use photographs, you can play a video. You can also use a physical object or a prop, and ask questions to get to your main point. And this is good if you have like a product or new products that you want to demonstrate. You can maybe hold up your products and ask them what's the difference, right? What are the similarities, what are the differences? Is one cheaper than the other? Is it how they're made? In the movie Up in the Air, George Clooney, he does motivational speeches. And he uses a backpack. So he's talking about basically ridding yourself of material possessions. And so he's using a backpack to talk to his audience. And then lastly, you can use a diagram. So whether it's like a flip chart or a whiteboard, whatever you want to use. So it's kind of like Pictionary. In the original Independence Day, the first one, Jeff Goldblum does this. He uses a diagram to explain to Bill Pullman, who is the president, as to why the satellites are getting interrupted. And so he's, he draws the Earth and he draws the ships and the satellites, and he's talking about line of sight. And so he's trying to educate Bill Pullman so he can make an educated decision about what they need to do. So there's many different options that you can use for framing, and you need to think about what topic is going to work best for you and what topic works best for your audience. And when we think about framing, just a couple things to keep in mind. Try to keep your frames to around a minute or so, and then use a variety, right? We want to diversify our frames. So don't all use videos or quotes, maybe kind of mix it up. And then if you can relate them back to each other, that kind of helps your audience building connections with the content as well. Okay, speaking of mixing it up, we are gonna watch a short video. So this is from the movie 1,000 Words. And for those of you who have not seen it, Eddie Murphy, he plays Jack. And a tree appears in Jack's yard. And every time that Jack talks, leaves are falling from the tree. And when the tree is out of leaves, then Jack is going to die. So Jack has decided he's not going to talk anymore. So here we go.
Good morning, sir. What can I get started for you today? Express yourself. What size? All right. 3 venti lattes. Would you care for a pastry? Nope. Oh, mocha. 3 mocha lattes. Oof. Double chocolate chip muffin. Yum. You want 3 Paul McCartney CDs. Awesome. I love the Beatles. They are my life. Something. Assassination. Abraham Lincoln. You, me, gun, shoot. 3 shots. I know, I'm a little slurred today. All right, so 3 lattes, 3 mochas, double chocolate chip muffin, and 3 shots. No assassinations. Oh, and 3 Paul McCartney CDs. That's gonna be 68.12.
All right, so you can see that the delivery and the performance of a message, it's not just about the words and how you say them, right? Going back to the movie lines, it's not just about those words, but how the actor delivered and performed them. And it has a lot to do with what you don't say. So think about, when you're texting, I don't know if anyone has ever had a conversation. I know I have, when I've been texting with a friend and we're having this conversation, and then I see them in person or I talk to them over phone, and it's like we had a completely different conversation. So just as words can be interpreted in different ways, so can our body language. And sometimes you might say something that you don't mean with body language. So for instance, right, if I have my arms crossed, I don't know if you guys can see, right? This can be, okay, maybe I'm cold, or I just want you to get away from me, right? Either way, there's different interpretations to our body language. So if we are to be intentional with our overall message, so our audience is understanding what we are conveying, we need to pay attention to our nonverbal communications. And there you go. So here's the stats. So your words are really only 7% of your communication. Your tone of voice is that 38%. So tone of voice, are you yelling? Are you projecting? Are you monotone? Are you using inflections in your voice? Things like that. Your body language is over 50% of your communication. So you can be saying everything right, but your audience might not understand you, or they might interpret it differently because of your body language. Maybe your nervousness is coming off as you don't know your content, or you're not as confident in your solution. And we see it everywhere, right? All sorts of body language, right? From facial expressions, we have gestures, you got the whole body. So what can you do in your presentation when you're thinking about body language. And there's a few things, and a lot of people always worry about the hands, right? What am I doing with my hands, right? Don't stick them in your pockets. Don't put them under your armpits because that's weird, right? So really your hands, and you got to kind of feel like whatever's comfortable for you, but really just kind of by your sides. Some people kind of have them kind of just like this, right? Some people kind of have them in front and they kind of talk like this or whatever. Mine are kind of at my computer, right? Because I have to use my mouse and everything. So different things that you can do with your hands. Another one is eye contact, right? You don't want to be staring at the ceiling, right? Or just wandering around. You don't want to linger on the same person for too long because that's also weird. So you want to make sure that you're kind of roaming with your eyes. So you're kind of scanning the whole time. And then there's also your body, right? So your body weight. Are you shifting from one foot to the other, right? What are we doing with that? Are we pacing? Am I kind of going back and forth, right? What is distracting to the audience? Are you swaying, right? Some people sway. I know I do this. I'm working on it, but I can't help it, right? And it can be overwhelming because there's a lot of things that you have to focus on when you're up in front of a crowd. So my suggestion is to pick one thing. Like if you know that you like to shift or you sway, just pick one thing and focus on that and practice, right? That's exactly what Robert De Niro was doing in Taxi Driver when he was in front of that mirror, right? You talking to me? Well, I don't see anybody else here. He was practicing. And you can practice in front of a mirror. You can practice in front of a friend. You can record yourself and watch it later, but just one thing to focus on at a time. So how many people like public speaking? How many people like getting up in front of a crowd? It's not my favorite, I'll be honest. But the good thing is that since we are influenced by other people's nonverbal expressions, we can also be influenced by our own nonverbal behavior. Has anyone heard of the power pose? Power pose. If you have not heard of it, you have probably seen it, right? This is Superman, Wonder Woman pose, right? You see it a lot in the animal kingdom. So this pose, you're opening up, you're taking up space, right? You're spreading out, right? You ever heard of the fake it till you make it? This is more of like the fake it till you become it. And it's applicable in presentations and even in job interviews. So they've conducted studies of people during, before, and after interviews who have done the power pose and how it's affected their confidence. And it definitely works, right? And you don't have to do it standing up, right? You can do it sitting down. So if you're a lady, right, be cautious of what you're wearing, right? But not being so closed in, right? But just kind of opening up, making sure that your body is open, right? Because open is inviting, right? We're being vulnerable, we're being authentic, we're inviting them in so that they will accept the content that we have to be presented. So body can change our mind can change our behavior, and our behavior can actually change the outcome of our situation. All right, so I'm going to switch gears for a little bit. I'm going to tell you guys a little story. So my friend lives in Wisconsin, Matt, and we like to video chat every now and then, and we use Facebook because we're old. It is what it is. And so one time he was asked me about Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and he wanted to do a Dungeons and Dragons campaign with his wife and their friends. And so he wanted me to help him put it together. I know nothing about Dungeons and Dragons, but I was curious. And so I said, you know what, Matt, that sounds really cool. Like, can you tell me a little bit more? So he does. So he starts to explain it, and he starts off simple, right? He starts, okay, well, it's a role-playing game and there's a dungeon master. And then he goes into, well, it was first published in the 70s. And he goes into the, types of campaigns and characters are acquiring XPs. And then he starts sending me links, right? Because we're on Facebook. So he's sending me all these links to D&D sites, and there's character classes and there's different backgrounds. And he's sending me this like write-up about some encounter progression and all these images and all that other stuff. But at that point in time, I was just like, what? I had no clue. I had no clue what he was talking about. And it wasn't because he wasn't knowledgeable, and it wasn't because he wasn't passionate about what he was talking about. It's because his level of knowledge is way up here, and mine is way down here, right? You cannot expect your audience to meet you up there. This is called the expert curse. You cannot overwhelm your audience because they're not going to be in that learning phase of the decision cycle. So you need to simplify your message so your audience is ready to learn by knowing what you need to leave out that's not needed and focusing on your main points, right? You have to give them the right information so that they can decide. And storytellers do a lot of this, especially when we're turning a book into a movie, right? You have 400 pages of a book and you have maybe 2 hours of a movie. You don't have a lot of time and you don't have all day. And when you're with clients, it's the same thing. You don't have all day. And sometimes you might have less time than you thought. Maybe you had an hour scheduled with a client and something happened with schedules and now you only have 30 minutes with a client. What do you do? What are you going to take out? You have to know. And you know your content best. What do you need to tell them to persuade them to make the decision that you want them to make? And what you tell them in your presentation, remember, we're not word vomiting, right? This is not an info dump. Maybe this was okay in school, like you just tell your teacher as much as you know so you can get a good grade. You can't do that with clients, right? You're going to lose them and you're going to overwhelm them and you're going to confuse them. And they're not going to be able to make the decision that you want them to make. So they must understand the content. So instead, pick the most important things, right? And focus on that, maybe 3 to 5 items, right? Depending on your time frame. And if the client really wants to know, do you understand their problem? Do you have a solution to the problem? And can you do it in a cost-effective and safe manner, right? Because the presentation, it's not about you, it's about the client. And you want to give them just enough information to get their attention and interest, and then explain to them how to solve their problems. And when I say simplify a message, right, I'm not talking about dumbing it down, because people know when you're dumbing it down for them, right? It's simplifying the language for anyone to understand. So maybe less technical jargon, right? Kind of read the room. You have to know who's in the room. And then less inside terminology. So some of the terminology that you use with your colleagues in your own organization, your client might not know that stuff and that might confuse them. So maybe less inside terminology. So bottom line, you have to know what you need to leave in and what you need to take out. So I'm going to go over one more thing for you guys, and then we'll go into our breakout rooms. So I want you guys to think back to maybe when you were in high school, maybe a sophomore in high school, and maybe some of you knew where you wanted to go for college and some of you didn't. I didn't really know where I wanted to go. So let's say you're a sophomore in high school and your guidance counselor is giving a presentation about choosing the right college. And her first slide about the factors that affect university choice looks a little something like this. And I will point out this is a simplified model, in case you guys were wondering. Is this slide going to make your decision any easier? Probably not, right? This is a visual info dump. Don't do it, right? Because where is the presentation really? The presentation is really you. You are the presenter. The PowerPoint is a visual aid. And the visual aids are really only there to enhance your content and to help you convey your message. So simplify your visual aids, right? And it doesn't have to be PowerPoint, right? It can be anything. You can use props. You can use videos. You can use other framing techniques, right? You can use anything for visual aids, right? But if you must use PowerPoint, which I know a lot of people do, try to keep it simple. And we keep it simple for this reason. Our brain has these 3 main pathways. So we can watch something and we can listen to something at the same time because those are 2 separate channels of information. But we can't read and listen because the written text is processed in the same part of the brain that processes the spoken texts. So we can't do it at the same time. So if you're going to do PowerPoint, simple is best, right? Minimize your use of text. I did not use a lot of text in this PowerPoint. If you need to use text, try to do bullets, right? Don't have full sentences on there, maybe 3 to 5 bullets per slide. And you can use as many slides as you want, right? Slides are free. Use as many as you want and make sure you really only have 1 main point per slide. And the last thing is, think about what is in your background, right? When I am talking and maybe I'm done with what is on the slide, you know, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's a B button and a W button here. So if I push the B, right, my screen goes black and I can hit any button and it brings it back. If I push the W, my screen will go white, and I can push any button and it comes back. So you want to make sure that they're focusing on where they need to focus. So if you have something on the screen you want them to focus on, have that on the screen. If you don't want them to focus on that and you want them to focus on really what you're saying, take that out, right? And then the focus goes back onto you. And again, this was more for in-person presentations, but it can also be applied for hybrid or virtual. So to sum it up, right, we're not going to stress out the potential college student because we're going to simplify our visual aids. And even though we are experts at our content, we're not going to info dump on others. We're going to tell them how we can solve their problem with simple language. We're going to be intentional with our nonverbal communications, so we don't order 3 CDs and a muffin that we don't want. And we're going to use framing, and we're going to force our perspective to influence and hook our audience so we can clearly communicate our content and persuade our audience to make the decision that we want them to make. So that is basically all the content I have for you guys. So now we're going to go into breakout discussions, and John is going to break us up into groups. So these are the prompts. So the first one, think about a time you had to present in front of a group. You know, what was your nonverbal communication? Were you making eye contact? Were you doing anything that was distracting to the audience? Name one thing that you can practice to focus on. And then the second one, think about a topic you might want to present to an audience. What framing example can you use to get their attention? So John, if you want to.
Yeah, do you want to, so sometimes we lose some people during the breakout groups. Do you want to
Sure.
talk about upcoming events first, and then we'll come back to the breakout groups?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Okay. So these are our upcoming events. I will note for the next emerging leaders, we're actually going to have an in-person lunch at the Rockwell Automation Fair. So for anybody who is actually going to be there in person, make sure we'll have more information on that. But it's going to be on that Wednesday. I believe that's the first day of the expo. We're going to meet where the CSIA booth is and then go to lunch as a group from there. And then the CSIA conference is going to be next April. I think it's in Dallas for this year. So if you missed it this past year, hopefully you guys can join us for next year. And then if you want, if you're not on the EL mailing list already, I think you can drop your email in the chat and we'll get you added to that. So
Yeah, you can drop the email in chat. I also put in a link. You could just sign up using that link, and that'll help get you more information as well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have time to stay on, again, John is gonna break everybody out.
Open all the rooms now. Hopefully people can turn on their cameras, interact. Generally feedback from other sessions. This has been the most impactful part of the session. So I encourage you to participate and connect. And I'm going to do the breakout rooms right now.